Hello, and welcome to the Integrative Learning Assignment by Patrice Bridges. Have you ever known a student who clearly understood the material but didn't succeed on assessment? That question has guided my learning throughout this course. In this presentation, I will explore how assessment practices can unintentionally create inequities for students. I will connect my learning across three major assignments: my case study, my literature review, and my policy analysis. Together, these helped me understand that assessment is not neutral. It can either support student success or create barriers. In my case study, I explored a grade 9 student named Maya, who was based off of myself. She was a strong hands-on learner and problem solver, even in her computer technology class. She often helped her peers and showed clear understanding during class activities. However, her grades remained low. This was because assessment was all multiple choice, and they were wordy and designed to be challenging to interpret. She struggled with reading fluency, and so even though she understood the content, the test's results did not reflect her knowledge. This raised an important question for me. Was the assessment measuring her understanding or her reading ability? This personal experience helped me understand that assessment is not always fair, even when it appears to be. Certain assessments, like multiple choice tests, can privilege students who are strong in reading, language, and test-taking skills. At the same time, they can disadvantage students with learning disabilities, English language learners, or students who process information differently. This connects directly to social justice in education. If assessments are not designed carefully, they can reinforce inequities instead of supporting all learners. In my literature review, I looked at the gap between inclusive education policy and actual classroom practice. Ontario policies promote inclusion, equity, and belonging. However, the research shows that in practice, systems still rely on labeling students, providing support only when difficulties arise, measuring student success based on narrow definitions of achievement. For example, Whitley and Howleck explain that inclusion is not just about placement, but about meaningful participation in learning. When viewed through this lens of UDL, ableism, and culturally relevant pedagogy, this gap becomes very clear. Instead of designing learning environments that support all learners from the start, students are often expected to adapt to existing systems. And this connects directly to policy. For example, Ontario's Growing Success Policy states that assessment should be fair, transparent, and supportive of all students. And in my policy analysis, I focused on reporting practices. The policy states that teachers should provide clear and accurate descriptions of both strengths and areas for improvement. However, in my practice, I've experienced situations where report card language is softened to sound more positive. While this may be intended to avoid concern, it can make feedback unclear. And the research also shows that systems can maintain barriers even when policies promote inclusion, as discussed by Toel. As a result, parents may misunderstand their child's progress. An important next step may not be communicated effectively. This creates a gap between what policy intends and what is actually happening. Assessment systems can appear fair, but can still reinforce inequities through how they are designed, how they are implemented, how they are communicated. Whether it is a multiple choice test that privilege certain learners or reporting practices that lack clarity, these decisions impact how students are understood and supported. And this is the idea that connects all of my learning. Assessment may appear to be fair on the surface, but it can actually create inequities in different ways. First, through design. For example, in my case study, the multiple choice format measured reading ability more than understanding. Second, through implementation. Even when policies promote inclusion, they are not always applied consistently in classrooms, as true inclusion is about meaningful participation. And third, through communication. In my policy analysis, I saw how report card language can be changed, which may lead to confusion and misunderstanding for parents. So when we put this all together, we can see that assessment is not just about measuring learning. It is also about how systems are designed, how decisions are made, and how information is communicated. So when we put this all together, we can see that assessment is not just about measuring learning. This learning has changed how I see my role as an educator. It is not enough to simply follow policy. I need to critically examine my own practices and ask, what am I actually assessing? Who is this assessment working for? And who might I be leaving behind? Assessment should reflect students' true understanding, not just their ability to navigate a specific format. Moving forward, I will design assessments that offer multiple ways for students to demonstrate their learning. Ensure that my feedback is clear, honest, and helpful, and continue to reflect on my own practice through that social justice lens. I want a classroom where I create assessment supporting all the learners, not just a few. This shows that even very well-intentioned policies can fall short if they are not fully reflected within classroom practice. Assessment should not determine who succeeds. It should be there to help all students succeed. Thank you for listening.